Hello everyone, Pete Brooker here. Today's show is part 2 of our chat with Dina Appel on the costumes of Austin Powers. We did part 1 last week, and this time around we get to talk about all those cameos from Woody Harrelson to Tom Arnold, Tom Cruise, etc. We also get to go into some Michael Caine chat and what it was like tailoring him for Goldmember, something we didn't get to talk about last time. So all that to come. I'm also joined by Nick Guzan from Bamp Style, who will be publishing an anniversary post on his site on The Spy Who Shagged Me, so be sure to check that out. Nat Spacer, of course, from Bond Suits. He's already posted an article on all the Bond comparisons, so that's definitely worth checking out over at bondsuits.com. I'll leave all the links over at my blog, of course, from taylorsoflove.co.uk. Just go to the podcast link and look for episode 119. Crikey. Who knew we'd done that many? A special thanks also goes to Dina Appel. You can find her on Instagram at Dina Appel. Be sure to drop her a note if you enjoyed the show, and if you're a fan of Austin Powers, I'm sure she'd love to hear from you. Okay, enjoy this one, and I'll be back on Sunday.
Yeah, I was actually curious what it was like in Goldmember working with Michael Caine, who I feel like it kind of had a role in establishing this look in the 60s and 70s, always playing these kind of swinging characters. And then in Goldmember, he's kind of riffing on it. And so I was just curious what that experience was like, or what inspiration you might have had either from things he had done before when dressing him, or just approaching working with him there in general.
Well, first of all, he was so lovely, and it was great fun. What a treat for all of us that he actually said yes to the part, because certainly Mike had admired him so much, and as I think you'd mentioned off of this podcast something about his glasses, or one of you had.
Yeah, he modelled his glasses on Harry Palmer from the Ipcress files, I learned.
I think there's even, and again, I'm not going to be the one to say which film, but there's some footage of Michael Caine, in one of his films that we use as a reaction shot of him as a young man.
That's right, when the car explodes.
Yeah. So that was kind of that was amazing that we were able to get that and, pretend that was part of our film. The interesting thing about Michael Caine was, trying to create the father image that would have spawned in Austin, and where he would have been extremely well dressed and something that Austin would have aspired to look like, but Austin had his own flair. So, there was no way that I was going to put the two of them in sort of competing bright suits, because they wouldn't be able to exist in the same frame. It would just be too overwhelming. I remember seeing a GQ cover at the time with navy and lavender, and I just thought that was the perfect flair. It was going to be rather Savile Row. It was going to be a tailored, beautiful suit, but just the subtlety of sort of the purple pinstripe and the lavender suit, or the lavender shirt, would let you know that they came from the same cloth, so to speak. The only thing about Michael Caine was that he's such a casual man in his life. It's a little challenging getting sort of a crispness to his character. I really wanted him to be very crisp, but Michael Caine is a very sort of soft and relaxed kind of a fellow. So that was a challenge.
I think, Matt, is there a story of Doug Hayward saying the same thing about Michael Caine?
Well, there's that story. I think it's about Michael Caine, where he was the one who came into Hayward's shop with he brought in like a blazer or something that Hayward made that had a hole in it, and Hayward just colored in the lining. Because that was kind of also what Hayward was, and that must have been one reason why the two of them were such a good pair of tailor and client. And they were good friends as well. Hayward's suits that Caine always wore were always so they were very soft suits, very relaxed suits. And I think just seeing Caine in these suits, he made them look so natural. So he could even take something that was very dressed up and make it look more natural and more casual by the way he wore it. I think that's a great way to wear clothes.
Yeah,
But,
so Tommy Velasco made that suit as well. So
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, I was going to ask, because at the end credits there is like all the clothes and costumes are made on the lot at Universal there.
yeah, and it was not a Universal film. It was just that his tailoring was so exquisite that he, that I had pretty much anything important was made at Universal, both the men's and the women's. And then some of it was also, some of the women's by the third film was made at Bill Hargate costume.
I'm going to draw another parallel to the Bond films. The revolving bed, that lifts straight from the pages of Casino Royale, but the 67 version. Did you look at that film as well in particular?
Oh, all of them. Every single one, every single film. As I said, every Bond, in like Flint, every Peter Sellers, every Diabolique. There was blaxploitation films for the third film. There were just all of it. Anything we could get our hands on, yes.
I had been watching, or I just recently rewatched Bob and Carol and Ted and Alice, and for the final act of that, when they're in Vegas, Robert Culp is dressed in a navy suit, cut almost exactly, or at least it felt like a lot like the Austin Powers cut, wearing the white jabot that he actually has Diane Cannon unbutton in the back, and I think he has the black boots too. And I was just wondering how much, especially since, that's like the defining like swinger movie too. Like, I wonder how much his character, how look had kind of informed that, or just been part of what the Austin Powers signature look was trying to tap into.
I can't say that was a reference for me. I think it was more oddly, George Harrison was really the strongest thread for me, connecting to Austin's style from top to bottom. Really, there was another silhouette, which was this pullover velvet shirt that had a buttoned bib in the front. It was a Davy Jones, sort of the Monkees reference. So again, I did find it quite a bit in music as well.
Yeah, I just find it so interesting how it was Austin Powers brings together so many different aspects of the 1960s, because even in the James Bond films in the 60s, there's very little of that type of culture.
Yeah, it's funny that it's the story references and a lot of the gags have a lot of Bond connection. But I think, as I said, I was trying to just cull everything fabulous about the period, wherever it came from, just kind of the best of the best.
The Thomas Crown affair as well, the scene with the chess. It's straight in there.
Yes, absolutely.
That's it's the bit where she goes, "Look, I was supposed to kill you, but I find you so," and then he just waits for it. And he goes, "Sexy," and he goes, "Thank you."
So that's also probably one of my two favorite suits in the trilogy, is that sort of.
So that's like the multi. How would you describe it? It's like a multi-pin tiled colored suit. How do you
put rainbow checkerboard as my note for that.
Much better. Better.
Yeah, that was another upholstery fabric. Yeah.
Because I was even thinking, is that I can get away with wearing that today? I started looking for it online.
In Goldmember, how did you end up with Austin in the pimp outfit?
Oh yeah.
That's very different for him. That's something that's like very, very different for him.
Yeah, it's funny. I can't really recall how it was written, honestly. We knew that it was going to be this mashup, that he was going to the 70s, but it was also a disco, but there needed to be all this gold in the room, and gold was not really, it was considerably later, the gold and metallic and all of that. So I'm not yet answering your question exactly, but there had to be this sort of background of all of this gold, and so trying to kind of build all of those things and create disco and roller skating in like golds and rusts and browns and all of these warm tones with metallics that didn't really exist at the time. So we were kind of cheating it, and again, taking the best of the best. And then Austin needed to walk in, and in the midst of all that, stand out. So he was always meant to be kind of a fish out of water. I stumbled over these blaxploitation films that were phenomenal. I think it was also an inspiration that they used for the car that was his time machine, travel time machine that he went back to the 70s in as well.
Right.
And the car was really, it was a key point in terms of figuring out what period Austin would be keyed to. And I just wanted something that was so over the top and so bold. And there was also a scripted element that didn't really make it in the film, where he was wearing these platform shoes that he would push a button in a very Bond way and kind of expose the roller skates.
Oh, nice.
They would like break away and expose the roller skates. So we built these ridiculous platform shoes with this signature stripe of his, and they needed to look like they could be big enough and tall enough to encompass roller skates.
That's nice.
They never actually used the gag in the film, and so we ended up having roller skates and the boots. That costume, this sort of mitered striped fur coat, which was something that I'd seen the idea of it in this Willie Dynamite film. So I incorporated it into this look but in an explosion of color. Again, I think it was probably, I want to say it was brown and white or something. And so, I had to Austin it and turn it into this tealy turquoisey color with the pink accents and the fur stripe. And it was it was a mammoth undertaking, all of the parts that went into that. And then also created his male symbol necklace in sort of this enormous bling kind of. I think that was made by a New York jeweler that did a lot of things for rappers in the time.
I guess the next decade they'd have to come back. If they did a fourth one, they'd have to cover the 80s somehow. I mean, there was rumblings about doing a fourth one. Did you hear about any of that?
I think there's been so much talk over the years, and I think both Jay and Mike have always said that they would stay open to it, but I think they haven't found the way in. Would it be a spin-off of sorts? Would it be Dr. Evil's story? Would it be, how would Mike play Austin at this point in his life? And I don't know. I'd certainly be happy to be there. There was always talk of a musical on Broadway as well, so I'd love to see that happen.
Oh wow, yeah, that'd be a real lateral move as well, because like so many of these pieces are music numbers. I mean, Mike Myers even performs a couple of songs, right? Like he used to sing in his old band.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Dina, I promised that I wouldn't talk about all the cameos because it's impossible to remember all of them. But just in terms of logistics, do you have to be there in, say, the cutaways? I mean, there's like ones where Woody Harrelson will be in it for all of 2 seconds and Spielberg will be there for all of 2 seconds. I mean, are you on set there all the time in these places?
So I'm not ever really on set all the time, because I'm I have costumers who are maintaining the continuity of the the production. Certainly for all those big days. I mean, the opening sequence that you're referencing with Spielberg, and I was there for all of that. All of the big extravagant numbers, I'm always standing there sort of biting my nails. But the smaller, and essentially, if you're asking, did I dress all of those people? Yes, I did dress all of those people for all of those scenes.
Wow.
Some of those scenes were period clothes that were, they were curated more than built. So most of those sequences were not built because we had our hands full with the gazillion other characters. I had fittings with them, I dressed them and all of that. But I forget. I mean, until you just said Woody Harrelson, I just completely forgot.
And
those are sorry.
Oh no, I was just gonna say Woody Harrelson. Actually, the jacket he wears kind of reminds me of that. I would assume it's a brocade silk that Austin's wearing in The Spy Who Shagged Me when he's out, and they're dressing the Buckingham Palace guard and everything. The jacket, reminded me of that.
Yeah, that jacket was, again, that was sort of the Beatles going to India, that was that, like, and coming back with all this sort of ethnic travel. I mean, that was another element. That's why I keyed to a lot to the Beatles was just the idea that Austin was this international man of mystery, which to me meant that he was well-traveled and he collected his fashion and his style from all over the globe, You couldn't pay me right now to tell you what Woody Harrelson was wearing, because you guys just watched the film and I could not even tell you what that was. I can't visualize it at all.
Woody, over Wang. What are you looking at, Wang? Oh, the one-eyed monster. I liked also. I went through some of the trivia, and because that tested so well in the cinema, I think they went back and did more of those.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely expanded my vocabulary, probably at an age where I didn't need to know too many words for that.
Exactly.
Oh man, I think so. It's slightly weird watching these on your own, which I did because the girlfriend was away, and laughing out loud on your own. But I mean, I'm smiling all the way through these, but I found myself laughing out loud more on the third one. And I don't know about you guys, if you had a favorite out of the three.
I think for me it was the first one, but it also might have just been the order. I mean, I hadn't seen these in so long, and then it's just returning to that world and just letting yourself enjoy something that's just so fun and so bright and colorful. Yeah, Pete, I had the same experience. I was sitting by myself laughing out loud.
Dina, when was the last time you saw all of these?
It's a good question. I have a son who is 13 and a half. When you say, Nick, about being too young for some of the, some of the comedy, it's funny because I know a lot of people who've had young kids see the film and they can enjoy it without the comment, without really understanding all of it. So a lot of it would go over their heads. I had shown my son, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, I think the first two, and then recently we watched Goldmember. When I say recently, I mean within the past few years. He was hysterical. He just thought it was the funniest thing ever. There are parts of it that are cringy in a way that's so, it's also over the top, but it's also just such a treat, as you said, to be able to laugh and smile and enjoy and understand all the references and all of the, you feel like an insider when you get to pick up on, oh, that's from this film and that's from that film, and that's a reference from the culture of the time, and so you feel like you're a little bit of an anthropologist as you're watching, and that's just such a treat, and it holds up.
Yeah, I really appreciate that aspect of it, being able to watch them again and really know where so many of the references are coming from, and then also wondering how much am I missing.
Sure.
Because obviously I wouldn't know everything, and there's that's I love that so much. I also love seeing Burt Bacharach in these films.
Yes. Oh my God, he's such a sweetheart. He was truly a sweetheart. I mean, I tell stories because he would come to his fittings with, like, his wife had made him a lunch to take to his fittings, and he came with his little baggie of, different snacks to eat. And he was just such a sweet, sweet man.
Yes, I think I was watching the second one with a friend of mine at the time, and he was telling me, Burt Bacharach was a relative of his, and he was just, it was like something he liked seeing in the film.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and to have these musical geniuses, including, Elvis Costello and Burt Bacharach and Quincy Jones as well. Who wrote the song, the opening song in the day.
Yeah, that's such a cool moment when he's orchestrating it and then he just jumps out of the scene into the orchestra.
Yeah.
I do like the little, ladies and gentlemen, Quincy Jones or Elvis Costello.
Yeah.
It's just a nod. It feels like it's his iconography, like all the people that Mike Myers grew up with and and watched and loved over the years. And he gets to hug Michael Caine in slow motion. I think that's like how we all want to hug Michael Caine if we ever had the opportunity, and he got to do it like that, which is great.
Exactly. Well, and also just the way the story unfolds, because certainly when we started the trilogy, we never knew there would be a second or a third film, and we never knew that the story would unfold, that these two divergent worlds and these two men were really brothers. So.
Yeah.
Well, it makes sense. I mean, there is that family resemblance in their faces.
That is true.
Makes sense.
Very interesting story, Mr. Powers. Of course, I'm gonna have to wait until I see all the facts. Daddy!
Shh. Daddy's here, Dougie. Shh.
Dougie? Shh. Dougie?
Dougie, remember Dougie?
Dad? What's going on?
What are you going to do, Austin?
Austin, are you sure you can trust Dr. Evil?
He ain't heavy. He's my brother, baby.
Yeah.
I wrote down an odd list of other references to Bond. Robert Wagner as, well, potentially Largo in the White Dinner suit, in the casino scenes. Is that something that's scripted, Dina?
Not really. No, that was not scripted at all. It was just, again, just keying into how to, for me, costume design is, even in the silliest of projects like Austin Powers, you take it very seriously. The silly comedy is taken very seriously. And so, you know, the research is meticulous, just to tangentially, like the Scots Guard, you know, every detail is very specifically researched. But I'm also very conscious of the storytelling and the character building and painting a picture. So in a way to have people be able to stand out and separate in a scene, and trying to tap into all the iconography from the period. And, you know, now it's sad. You go to Las Vegas and everybody's in jeans and hoodies, you know, and it was just such a treat. The idea that someone as elegant as Robert Wagner could, you know, as number 2, that is, could be in a white dinner jacket.
Yeah, that number 2 gag is just, I don't know if I can go back to Bond now and listen to number 2, but the Tom Arnold, would you call that like a budgie jacket, what he wears in that toilet scene there? I think that looked terrific.
Oh gosh.
But
I
when he's telling him to tell him that, you know, that turd who's boss. I think
yeah. That Tom Arnold cameo was really something else. I remember fitting him at his house. I had to go out to his house to fit him. A lot of times when you had sort of celebrities of the day, you would have to go to them versus them coming to you. And I remember being in his closets, and he said, just because we did the fitting in his physical closet with our clothes. And I remember him saying that he had his assistant put the sizes on all of his clothes, and I wasn't quite sure what he meant. And it was really not the sizes, it was the weights, because his weight had fluctuated. So he would put like, this fits me at this weight and this fits me at this weight.
Oh,
wow. In his closet.
Oh wow, that's dangerous.
Very, very elaborate.
I should have done that over quarantine. That would have been helpful.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, I think my favorite of the clothing gags, I'd say, in the film is when they have Austin Powers in the Ursula Andress swimsuit. The second one. This is just, I mean, this is like really like something that really references Bond in a direct clothing way that we don't see that much in the films.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was some silly stuff. That was definitely some silly stuff. I'd forgotten about that.
It's got the chest hair out as well, which is just it's so massive.
Yeah. I mean, that brings me to also in the third one, when they take off their wetsuits and miraculously have their costumes under the wetsuits.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Beyonce's hair just then comes out in a huge puff with a head shake, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's so good. Beyonce's so good in this.
Yeah.
I actually really like her. I think she's incredibly sexy. I think she dances and sings, and she also just doesn't tread on any gags or anything. She just kind of lets everything play out. I just felt like she had a really good role in this.
Lovely girl, lovely, really sweet as could be.
And also, you had like the odd job random task guy as well.
Right.
Of
Yes.
that, I mean, that was, so that joke is kind of sullied now because I read trivia about this guy. He went to jail.
Yeah, I think I heard that. Yeah, I mean that was definitely a very specific, direct lifting of character for sure.
Who throws a shoe?
Yeah. Well, just the fact that Mike would say, or I should say Austin would say out loud whatever everyone else was thinking. So because he had no filter, so he would just comment on it, which so you felt like you were in on the gag because he was pointing out the gag.
Yeah. But
I'm
I mean,
guessing-
the character is great just because he is dressed like Odd Job was.
Yeah.
It just so it really is just spot on, and I think it definitely helps the gag that he's just like Odd Job except throw something else.
Yeah.
I mean, you must have got to know Mike pretty well, perhaps more so than anyone, right? I mean, because he's obviously the main character in like the hero, the villain, and then subsequent villains and sidekicks. I mean, so for all the fittings, and you must have been hanging around him quite a fair bit.
Yeah, I mean, I have to, as I said in the beginning, that Mike would have been happy to have the one suit for all three films. That was really because he did not like doing fittings. It was not his happy place.
Right.
So, he had a tremendous amount of responsibility because he opened this can of worms by playing Austin and Dr. Evil, and then as it blossomed with each film, and he was playing Fat Bastard, and then he was playing Goldmember. And he's writing, and he wisely left a great deal to Jay Roach in terms of running the crew and the creatives because he had so much on his plate. I mean, it was really a tremendous to be able to. Plus, he would be in makeup and hair for a very long time. I mean, he would shave his head to be Dr. Evil. So he'd shave his head at the beginning of every film, and then he would wear wigs for all the other characters. And that was just to make that process easier.
Right.
But it was a big makeup transformation. Dr. Evil had a nose and contacts, and so he had plenty to keep his hands full. And so fittings were kind of, I think, something that took him out of where he really wanted to be, which was working on the script and punching the jokes. And certainly he had dance numbers to learn and songs. And so, it was very, I think, honestly, begrudgingly that he came to his fittings. So the fewer the better would have made him very happy. So it was, in a way, I mean, Austin is the centerpiece of everything, without a doubt, but there's just so much around him as well that required my attention as well.
Yeah. Dina, thanks so much for taking time out to join us today and take us down memory lane.
My pleasure.
You mentioned earlier about the research libraries that you had down at the Universal Studios. That sounds like a great day trip. Like, I don't. Matt, did your ears prick up when you heard about those binders?
Oh yeah, that would be.
Yeah, I mean that was actually at Warner. It was Warner Brothers, but it was Warner Research, and it's the library. I don't think it's still there. I don't think they still have that. I don't think it's available anymore, sadly. And Lucasfilm Library is no longer available to the public. So now I'm afraid all of the research has to, I have an enormous collection of books, of course, as well. But beyond that, it's, you can Google to your heart's content.
Do you still have any of the illustrations or the designs?
Oh, yes.
You do?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yes. All the illustrations from all three films, which, they're just safely tucked away. There's someone that I've met in the past couple of years who is a collector there have been various collectors over the years, because at the time, New Line, with each film, they had an auction site and they auctioned the costumes off. Sadly, they didn't really keep an archive, but they had sold them through this auction site. And there was one collector at the time who had collected an enormous amount of them, and then they kind of switched hands here and there. And then I recently met someone who was working on a show that I do now, and he's determined to collect as much as he can possibly collect. So he has that sort of colorful checkerboard suit from the one that we were talking about earlier.
He has that.
He also
From the
just
chess
bought,
scene.
yeah, he just bought the pink bathing suit from the opening in the second one. He has the Felicity crochet dress. He has a number of costumes, and it's absurd the amount of money that people are spending on these costumes. So all to say that I'm sure that the illustrations are valuable, but they're mine for now.
That's good. That's good.
Well, I do hope they will all show up in a museum exhibit at some point soon.
Mm-hmm.
That would be
that would be I'm sure there would be a lot of interest in that.
yeah, that would be fun.
Love to see that. Well, I normally also very quickly do a little roundup of if these did come up for auction and you were able to buy them now. Nick, which piece out of all three would you go for?
How much should it fetch? 250, 300,000 pounds. Anything more would be crazy.
Property of a lady.
Well, there are quite a few ladies here.
Ooh, I really love the red self-striped velvet double-breasted that he wears in Vegas when he sits down. Austin does. I love that look so much. No idea if I'd be able to pull it off if I tried to wear it, but I just feel like it's so iconic, so bold. That's always just been, when I think of a character, I think of that first.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
That's surprising.
Yeah.
But great, love it.
Oh, good.
Matt, did you have any?
Yeah, well, for me, I always go for the clothes that would probably most closely be what I would like to wear myself, and I'd go with Michael Caine's suit. I think he's someone I admire. I admire his fashion, many of his films, but so I think he'd be his suit is the one I'd go for.
Nice.
That's pretty cool. Well.
And what about you, Pete?
Well, if it's available, I'll lift your description of it, Nick, but I'll have the rainbow checkerboard colored suit that he wears.
Well, I know who owns it, so.
We'll have to patch him into the core. Dina, thanks so much again for coming on the show. Nick, Matt, also thanks for taking time out on the weekend. It was great talking to you all.
Yeah, this was great.
Thank you, Pete. Thank you, Dina.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Lovely to meet you all.